Hello, welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic. Now today we're back on classic Sudoku, and this video today is going to be designed more for the sort of intermediate solver, to give you a way of looking at a particular trick, spotting it more easily and helping you with your solving. And the reason I thought I'd do this video is that, well, it's two reasons. Firstly, we did a puzzle recently on the channel. It was an incredibly good but incredibly difficult classic Sudoku compiled by Richard Stolk, and that involved 3 hidden triples and discovering those. And it occurred to me that actually, that's not a technique that some people know about. So maybe we should study it in a little bit more detail and a little bit more slowly. And that was also prompted by us getting an email from Akshay Anand asking me to solve the New York Times hard Sudoku from the 12th of November. And as I was typing this into our software, I noticed this trick, which comes up a lot in the New York Times, therefore I always look for it. But it occurred to me that therefore it might be worth just spending a minute or two talking about how to go about spotting hidden triples. So let's take a look at this grid. Now what I do is, before I enter in any digit at all, I look for 3x3 boxes that only contain contain as many digits as possible. Let's look at this one up here, subject to the condition that there is an open flank. Now what do I mean by an open flank? What I mean, if we look at these 3 cells, this is what I mean by an open flank. So you can see here as well, we've got the same thing. We've got 3 digits and a completely open row here. Same down here, 3 digits, an open column. And when I find this, what we know, we can say something quite interesting immediately. If we look at this box, we now know that the numbers 1, 5 and 8 are forced to be in these 6 positions here. Now in some cases we'll find that this becomes very, very restricting. So let's look at this 7, 2, 8 here in the center with this as the open flank. So I now need to put the numbers 7, 2 and 8 into the rest of this row, not these squares. So these 6 positions. But this time we've already got a couple of given digits. So it's a shame one of them is repeated, so the 7 is repeated. But here the 2 and the 8 therefore would have to go into those 4 squares. And again we can check that visually, have a look. Is there enough of a restriction? Not quite. But if you haven't spotted it yet, do pause the video, take a look at the grid. Hopefully you're playing along actually. If you don't know how to do that, just click on the link under the video. That'll take you to our software where you can play the puzzle. But let's have a look now at this bottom left box. Because here we've got 3 digits, we've got an open column, and look, this time we hit the jackpot. Because in this column, we've already got 3 given digits and none of them correspond with the 1, 2 and the 6. So where can we put 1, 2 and 6 in this column? Well, only in these 3 squares. Now, why is it worth talking about this? The reason is that most of the standard techniques you use to solve Sudoku, indeed most of the techniques that the very best solvers use to solve Sudoku, don't pick this up very easily. So if we go back to classic Snyder notation, which is certainly what I'd recommend, what Snyder notation looks at is where a number can go within a 3x3 box. So here, if we look at where 2 can go in the yellow squares, because of the 2 here and the 2 here, the 2 is locked into one of those 2 positions. So I'd make little pencil marks to remind me of that fact. But let's now try and see whether the pencil marking is going to tell us that there's a 1, 2, 6 triple here. And it just doesn't. There's just not enough information. I mean, there are no 6s in any of those positions. So although with this 6 here we can limit the 6 slightly in this top box, we certainly can't limit it to 2 positions. Similarly with 1s, we've got 2 1s here. They limit the 1 slightly, but only to 3 positions, and certainly they're not telling us enough about these 3 squares. So spotting this sort of thing, it has to be done a different way, and that's why it's worth talking about. Now let's think about the immediate implication of this and show you how powerful it is. Well, if we get this 1, 2, 6 triple, where are we going to put a 9 in this column? You can see because of the 9s here and here, there's only one position for a 9, which is this one. And again, I just want to spend a moment. I want to delete all of this. And let's look at 9s now. So the first digit we can put in the grid, if we know about this hidden triple, is a 9 here. And in fact, I've just noticed that we can also put an 8 here. But let's focus on 9s first. How would we get on with pencil marking? Would the fact there was a 9 here be revealed by pencil marking? And the answer is no. We get 9s here and here, so we could pencil mark it to within 2 squares. But what tells us that this square is a 9? And the answer is there's nothing. There's just not enough information. If we look at this box and say, well, can we restrict the 9 here in order for us to allow us to get at which of these is the 9? Well, the answer is no. There are no 9s in the central 3 rows of the grid at all. So we just don't know enough. The only way is spotting this triple, and that has a profound effect on this square because it limits it to being a 1, 2 or a 6. Well, actually with that 2 there, it limits it to just being a 1 or a 6. And now all of a sudden the importance of this 9 becomes revealed, because looking at this box now, the 9 is forced to be in one of those 3 squares because it cannot be here, and therefore we know that's the 9 here. So that is the lesson of hidden triples. Now, having said all that, let's see if we can solve the puzzle based off this. So you can see we can limit this all slightly. This one we know is a 9. These 2 squares must be 4 and 8 to complete the column. We know this must be an 8 now because of these 8s here and here. That means this is an 8 because of this 8. That's these 8s interacting. Therefore that's an 8 over there because there's loads of 8s in the grid actually. There's all sorts of 8s interacting on in various places. There must be an 8 in one of those 2 squares as well. And what next? Actually, if we look at this column, where can we place a 4 in this column? Well, we have a 4 here and a 4 here, and 4's there. So there's actually only one position a 4 can go into, and that's going to be at the top. Therefore, that's a 4. Therefore, that's a 4. Now we are away and running, aren't we? That's a 4, that's an 8, and that's an 8. So we've now done all the 8s, and we haven't. Have we done all the? No, we haven't done all the 4s. Still need to work on 4s. This 4 here means there's a 4 in one of those 2 squares. Twos, look, are ruled out of those positions, so there must be a 2 here and a 2 here and a 2 over there. We've got 6 numbers now in column 7, so we still need to put a 2, 3 and a 7. Well, actually we're going to be able to resolve everything here because we've got 2's here, so the 2 must go at the top. 7 here, so this must be a 7, that must be a 3. And now these 2's interact nicely. They force a 2 into one of those squares in this box, which point at this square. This square can no longer be a 2. Once we remove the 2, we find a 1, 6 pair now in column 1. This must be the 2. And let's just check, because we've also got this 3 and the 7 that we've just found. So the 7's must be down there. Whoops, 4's must be in one of those 2 squares. That's these 4's interacting. Oh, 5 here, so there's a 5 in one of those two positions. Just going to check the rest of this column. What do we need? We need 3, 5 and 7. Ah, well there's a 5 and a 7 there, so that must be a 3. Those two squares are 5 and 7, so I've shifted pencil marks there just to differentiate between corner pencil marks and corner pencil marks. I'm saying something about a 3x3 block. I am not saying anything about the cell itself. I'm saying that the 4 can go in exactly 2 positions within the 3x3 block. Here, when I centrally pencil mark, I'm saying this particular square can only be a 5 or a 7. It's an important difference. It's definitely worth getting into the habit of making both types of pencil mark. Now let's take a look at 5s. Look, we've got 5s here and here, so that square's got to be a 5. Should have spotted that before. That square's a 5, therefore. These two 5s interacting. Must be a 5 in one of those two squares. These squares have got to be 1, 2 and 9. Right, well the 1 fixes a 1 in one of those. The 2 fixes a 2 in one of those. 7. Now this 5 is interesting. And again, this is good. This is a good technical or something to bear in mind. Every new digit you get can have effects, obviously, on numbers you've already looked at. So it's quite important, if you can, to try and force yourself to keep checking numbers you've already looked at. Now look at the effect of this 5. I've got a cramp in my leg, that's bad. The effect of this 5 is really important for one number. So take it again, if you're not seeing it, pause the video. Have a stare at the grid, see if you can see why this 5 has become important. And the reason is, let's look at this block and ask ourselves where a 4 can go now. Now before this 5 was here, the 4 could go in, I think, one of those, not 4, in fact, where could the 4 go? Let's highlight all of the positions the 4 could go in. It could go here, here or here. So not helpful, and we wouldn't bother pencil marking it. But now, with the 5 here, it can only go in these two squares. And now look at the effect that has down here. Now this square cannot be a 4, so this one must be. But the moment I put this 4 in, I get the 4, which is great. But I also get the 2, because in placing this 4, I took the position of one of the two 2s that I'd pencil marked in the block. In placing this 2, I get exactly the same thing going on with the 7. And now we are starting to cook with gas, because there must be a 2 here now, just unwinding pencil marks. This 7 points at that square, that must therefore be a 5. That's a 7 at the top. This is a 5, just again unwinding pencil marks, not doing anything clever. These two squares are 3 and 6 now. These two squares are not 5. I'm going to remove the 5. 3 and 7, I think. Let's put those in. This 7 and this 7 now become important. They give me a 7 up there. That means that there must be a 7 in one of those two squares. Interesting to note, you could use uniqueness at this point if you wanted to look at those squares. There cannot be a 3 in either of these squares, because if there is a 3, you create a so-called deadly pattern. Let me just show you that for a quickly. Not like that. Let's imagine we looked at the finished solution. There was a 3 in this square. If there's a 3 in this square, you can see that there's going to be a 3 there, a 7 there, and a 7 there. And the problem with this arrangement is there is nothing about the internal logic of the puzzle that tells you why that is the correct solution and not this. So just if you're not seeing why that's the case, you can see in this column we've still got the numbers 3 and 7. We'd have the numbers 3 and 7 whichever way round I put this 3 and 7. In this column we've got the numbers 3 and 7, and whichever way round they were, I'd have the numbers 3 and 7. In this block I've got the numbers 3 and 7, whichever way round they were, I'd have the numbers 3 and 7. Same is true of this block. And in this row, whichever way round this 3 and 7 go, I would have the numbers 3 and 7. Similarly here. So this is a problem because that indicates that the puzzle does not have a unique solution. It has two solutions. Good Sudoku should not have two solutions, so you can instantly, therefore, if you are so minded and you want a trick, you can rule out 3 from both of these squares. So there was a 3 in one of these two squares, and therefore there's a 3 up here, and you can use that logic to develop your solution further. I'm not going to do that today though. I'm going to try and do this without using anything that exotic. My phone's ringing. Right, let's look at 9s. We've got 9 here, so this can't be a 9. 9's in this square. That 9 therefore means there's a 9 here. Now there must be a 4-9 pair in this central block. Sometimes I like to double notate that just because of the way my scanning works. I find it easier to see. Now this must be a 3 because of these 3's. This can't be a 3 actually, so this must be a 3 in this top box. Now this 3 means that this is a 3. So that logic that we talked about with uniqueness that removed a 3 from these two squares has now been proved by this 3 here, look. So we knew that would be the case, and indeed so it has emerged. Now we need a 6 in one of these two squares. Therefore that square over there ought to be a 5 to complete the row. These two squares must be 1 and 6, I think. Scanning down, I can't see which way round that goes. This must be a 1 or a 6 as well. The 4, 9 in this central 3 by 3 mean that we know those two squares must be 1 and 6. And that's going to be very helpful now. We've got a 1, 6 pair here. This one can no longer be a 6. So that's a 3, that's a 6, that's a 6, that's a 9, that's a 9, that's a 2, that's a 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6, 1. And you can see that all of a sudden we've made quite a flurry of progress there just by not doing anything clever, but by pencil marking properly. 1s and 9s here, so we can resolve that as well. 1, 9 to those two squares. We need a 1 in one of these two, so it's going to have to be that one. This should be a 6. That look right? Yeah. This is 2, this is 7, this is 7, this is 3, and that's going to be a 3. Check. And that is how to solve the puzzle. So as I say, a little bit different today, but one of the most important techniques to take you from intermediate level solving to hard level solving. And do take a look at the Richard Stolk puzzle. Get this in your head, then take a look at the Richard Stolk puzzle if you haven't already, because that is a masterpiece of this technique. Thanks for watching. Back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.